On today's show, we are joined by Mr. Dan Ross. Dan spent many years working as a full-time assistant based out of London before making the leap to becoming a commercial photographer in his own right. We chat to him about what he learnt from assisting, the do's and don'ts of the job, and how, why, and when he decided he was ready to transfer to full-time shooting. There's some absolute gold in today's episode, along with some laugh-out-loud anecdotes from Dan's time crewing and teching. So sit back, lend us your ears, and enjoy.
So, Dan Ross, we've both known him pretty long time, actually, a good few years. And I think we're both quite fond of him, really. It's certainly an interview.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's many photographers in London that won't have had some interaction at some point with Dan Ross if they're shooting in the commercial sector. He was a bit of an assistant slag.
I mean,
in the nicest possible way.
In the nicest possible way. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he was one of the busiest assistants because he was so good.
He was fantastic. He was one of those people that if you had on a shoot, you would you'd be happy that things were just going to work out. You know, you felt confident.
But also you'd have a good time as well. He's good value.
100%. Yeah. Likes making jokes.
One or two. But it's a shame that he didn't put any in the interview today. So it's we were always worried, I think, when we started the podcast about having a dry photography podcast, and with guests like Dan, we have certainly achieved our aim.
Yeah, maybe don't listen to this one with kids around.
And definitely hold on to your headphones. It's a cracker.
Cool. Well, without much further ado, let's get into it. This week on the show, we are very lucky to be joined by Mr. Dan Ross. Hello, Dan. How are you doing?
Hello, all. Very well. A little bit toasty in my little office on a hot day. But apart from that, yeah.
We have picked a horrendously hot day to do this, so apologies. I know you'd rather be outside sunbathing.
Well, to be fair, I'm so pale I'm like a reflector, so it's actually probably good to be shade hunting. So I'm actually not holding anything against you, so it's okay. Well,
we appreciate it.
I had to set up a C-stand in the garden today for my wife to hold an umbrella for shade.
This is what happens. Photography gives you life skills. It's absolutely fine.
Indeed. So basically, we wanted to bring you on the pod today, Dan, because anybody who's worked in London as a photographer will probably have come across you. You obviously are now a fully functioning adult.
Fully functioning
commercial and advertising photographer with a fantastic portfolio. And your journey to get there was obviously via assisting. So I kind of wanted to start really by asking you to explain a little bit about that journey and what that looked like.
Yeah. So never planned on being an assistant. It was a real weird dog leg. So in the last recession, I was actually going to be a brickie. I was. And then all the work dried up, and I've always skateboarded, BMX, whatever. And I was just like, well, what do I actually do? And a few of my mates were like, well, why don't you just take pictures? Because I always had I remember I had this old, was it a 60D, like a Nikon, like a really shitty old SLR, and I had like a 20mm lens on it, which worked out to be like a 35 or whatever. And then, that's boring, but started taking photos. And then that kind of just went, and I ended up going to sort of do a foundation degree. And actually I found that in the studios and on the commercial side, it's very similar to building. It's like creative problem solving. So, you're still rigging on the crew side, assisting and gaffering. You're still rigging stuff. You're still meeting different people all the day. It's quite a good, once you get your network, it's quite a good community as well. And you meet all those different character types, which actually you weirdly enough meet on a building site as well. It is strange. It's almost replicated. It's but it's just that the end product isn't a solid fixture. It's a digital banner somewhere in a train station. So I mean, the thing that really spurred me in was to assisting anyway the technical side. and I just fell in love with light and being able to solve problems for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if someone comes to you with a plan and they say, I need this to look a certain way. I was always taught by my dad, who's an engineer, to be indispensable and to be someone that you can't be without. And so to be able to do a job to the level where someone walks away and says, fucking hell, yeah, it'd be good to get him on the next job, not in an ego way, but in like a clear professional work way, was something that was already in me from being on site. If that makes any sense. So yeah, I probably stayed assisting longer than I planned to, because I didn't think I'd enjoy it so much. And I actually think in the period I was assisting, it's definitely turned into more of a lifelong career choice in the UK. I think it's become a lot more Americanized, in the sense that you can command all right rates and you can be respected as a professional without having to hold a camera, in that sense. I think when I started, there was definitely like different levels, but when I started, I was definitely more of I think dog's body is the wrong term, but you were more of a little bit of everything, and now I think you can sort of specialise and you can make a name for yourself for being that person where if someone, for example, wants a composite drink shot, they will ring blah, 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 because they know that he's really good with this kind of tech. Or if you're on location, they know that this guy travels a lot. That I think the flexibility to carve out your own path without necessarily taking the picture is a lot clearer now. Yeah, so I probably just rambled a lot and not actually told you anything about.
How many years did you assist then in the end?
I think it's about 8.
Okay,
maybe 9.
It's a decent amount of time. That is a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
So where did you start? Like, how did you kind of get your first assisting gig?
Yeah, so when I was in uni, I ended up getting like it's like a professional practice brief, and I had a chip on my shoulder in uni, because I really didn't, because I'm coming from working and stuff. I was just really not bothered. I was like, you know what, this is so boring, and I don't. The weird thing was I really liked documentary photography, but in uni having to study it, I was like, it's rubbish, because I was so used to being independent, getting a paid packet, doing all that stuff, and I sort of coming afterwards. So I had a chip on my shoulder. So anyway, we got this professional practice thing, and like emailed some people, and I actually emailed Glenn Burrows, and he was doing, I think it was like a JD Sports campaign in Kilburn at a sports centre. Anyway, so he was like, "Why don't you come down? It's not paid, but you can see what's what," and blah blah blah. Went on set. Ari, who's now over at JJ Media, was there when he was assisting back in the day. Yafet Ergency's running, I think he's gone into production at April, May, was there. He was digying, and it was the warmth those guys showed me. I was a bag carrier. I didn't know any lighting brands. I didn't know anything. Do you know what I mean? I knew what light was, and I knew what looked all right. And I think they were using all bronze Scoro packs on location and stuff. And it was like, it was quite GQ 2005 vibes. Lots of clips and lots of contrast. And I was like, what is all this kit? This is mega. This is cool. And I really enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, Glenn was just like, you've got a really good work ethic. Here's a wanna. Go treat yourself to something. And the advice that Ari and Yannick gave me and stuff, just work really hard and the money will follow and all that kind of stuff. If you're worried about living, and because I was saying to them, costs in London, because I didn't have much savings, and they're like, just graft. And I think actually that day instilled a lot into me, and I took away from that my 3 main rules for assisting were: don't pay attention to what anyone else is doing, work really hard, and work really well. Those are my rules. So
what do you mean by the first one? Sorry, like don't pay attention to what anyone else is doing.
So I think when you're an assistant, you worry a lot about your busyness. I think the photography industry, because you're so invested in yourself, you're not totally detached from your business, right? So it can become like a personal thing. So say if you get hired by a photographer and they don't like you, just because it's the world, isn't it? You might not get on or whatever, or they might not hire you again. But Joe Bloggs has been hired 6 times by him in a month. Why am I not getting that job? That it's just not good. Whereas if you are like a horse with some blinkers on and you're just going job to job to job to job, then you're only ever improving yourself, and you're not taking too much from other sources. And it's, for me, I guess I get a little bit stubborn, where it's probably a bit of my obsessiveness as well, where I just want to learn and be able to make sure I'm doing everything within its power on each bit of kit. I don't know if that makes any sense, but just working out my own ways to do stuff. Whereas I think a lot of people might worry that, I've only had like X amount of days this month, and that's when you start looking too much. Whereas that time should be spent, if you're wanting to be a career assistant, marketing, ringing, getting meets, calls,
Sure.
And my tactic was, instead of being a regular with someone, I wanted to be as unregular as possible, but as known as possible. So contacting as many agents as possible, working with a really wide range of photographers, from food to, cars, travel. But a lot of it, for a lot of years, it was very tech heavy, locked off composite, advertising, where I learned a lot of how to apply studio to location, which I think a lot of photographers, I think they appreciated, because you could say, you can use this bit of tech here and this bit of tech there. And if anything, it was also an excuse, because I was always very transparent. I'd be like, some people I assisted would be like, I'm not actually sure what this light does, but I know, because your agent said you've got another 400 quid in the budget, if we hire it, it could be really cool. And the photographers who haven't assisted, who don't know, they go, does it come out of my margins or rates? Because, advertising, whatever. And you go, no. And they go, oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and you go, cool. So then in your head, you're like, I'm going to mess around with this light all day. And then you can take that knowledge and apply it to another shoot where it might work better or whatever. So for me, it was just, getting clued up and not wanting to be like that assistant over there working for that guy. And why is his regular? He must be really good. I want it to be like, not in an ego way or anything. I want it to be the guy where someone's on set and then someone would have a light and they'd be like, oh yeah, I saw on Instagram that Dan Ross posted that thing 3 weeks ago. And then someone says, who's Dan Ross? And they go, I don't know, but he's quite busy. He's worked with this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy. And then it got to the point where I was like, I think it took about 10 months or a year. And then everything snowballed, and I was pretty much fully booked for about 5 years. And Monday, that's why I think I stayed longer assisting. Like a Monday morning at 11, I would have had like 7 emails for options, most of them clashing. But what I also wanted to do was not hog that work, was to send that work out through WhatsApp groups and hold everyone else's rates and push their rates up so everyone else was getting busier and doing it that way. A real collaborative effort, which I think, people have mentioned before, and I think we were having a chat before we got on. It can be quite hard as photographers because it's quite isolate, whereas assistants, you do bond to get. There are circles which overlap, where there might be a group of 20 here and a group of 15 here, where everyone looks out for each other's interests. And I think that's what I meant about the industry changing. Before, it might have been every man for himself. That's how it felt to me anyway. So that's why I blinked and didn't pay attention, because I didn't want to try and monopolize. I wanted to try and learn and engage with the photographers and take different bits from different people. If you can apply the way a car photographer uses light, this sounds really, really boring, but to a courgette on a food shoot, so you might be bouncing the light instead of doing it direct and whatever, then people go, oh fuck yeah, I never thought about doing that. And you go, well, it's just a surface which is semi-matte and which again loops back to the building thing. You might say use a different material on this wall, whatever. So yes, I mean, rambling again. I mean, I feel like this isn't really a conversation.
No. It's good. It's good. I mean, the thing is, I've used a couple of people from those WhatsApp groups, and I know they really appreciate it. And also, it's nice to know that there's that network. And from our point of view as photographers, it's great to know that if I message, someone and they're not available, they can go, well, actually, I'm in a WhatsApp group of 30 guys. Do you want me to see if any of them are available? And they go, sure. And so, you've not just reached out to one assistant, you've actually reached out to 31 assistants. So your options of getting that position filled at a short notice is going to be much more. Well, it's going to be much more improved, really.
Yeah, and on that level, within those groups, there is a transparency where if someone isn't clued up on this kit, or someone isn't, so you're not just gonna. It's not like you're getting palmed off. Because when I was really busy, I also always made sure that I was really transparent, and I'd say, like I've had a 3-day come in. I was always quite. I think that's where I bumped heads with quite a lot of photographers. So say if I was on a first option, and then it was a 1-day, and then I got like a 4-day travel gig in, and I'd say, from a business point of view, I have to take this job. But where some guys might leave that and then sod off, and the photographer goes, who the hell is this guy? I'd say, I've already talked to 3 people who are the same level as me, agreed to the same rates as me, done this. This is your options. And if you're happy, I'd be grateful to take this job and hook you up with these guys. So it's a trust level between the assistant and the photographers as well, which is what I'm now learning as a photographer. It is quite strong, and you do start seeing, it's not a loyalty thing, because I don't think anyone should be. At the end of the day, in advertising, you're running a business. There have been times where I've had assistants I respect say, I can't come tomorrow, but no reason or no whatever. And I don't get arsy about it, but I just say, and I actually talk about it laterally, and I say, did you not think that maybe you could, before doing this, have said to X, Y, and Z, are you free, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it's no difference. Because of being a bit of a slack on working, I know quite a lot of people say I can bring people in on connections, but I think for me, it was always about being professional and doing the best you can within your remit, and if that helps. Sorry? Yeah.
Do you think that your way of approaching it is kind of promoting the community aspect of it? Is generally people are scared of perhaps doing that because they feel like, especially with photographers, you see this, people are very guarded, it's very kind of closed off, people don't want to kind of reveal their secret, whatever, and there's not the same level of transparency, where actually when you do bring that in, like you have and like you were with the WhatsApp group, and turn it into a community, actually everyone does start to benefit. And most of all, you're the person who comes out of it that people are going, actually, that Dan Ross is a really nice guy, and he's sorted me out with this and he helped me out with that. And I think that then everyone basically comes out better if they all play along and play nicely in a way.
Yeah, there's no in life in general. I've always been of the angle that there is absolutely no point chokeholding a situation into being good for yourself, because there's always going to be collateral damage, right? So, whenever I was hooking up someone for a job, they'd be as good, if not a tiny bit better than me on a certain thing, because then full circle, it comes back to you. You go, well, that assistant you gave me was absolutely amazing. Best, and you go, yeah, I know they are, because I want you to be sorted. And then someone would be like, are you free next week? And you go, okay. There's no, if you're going to hire someone, it's like if you're a photographer, you want someone who knows more about something than you, so you can get on with what you want to do. As a photographer now, I want to look through the viewfinder and say, this looks great, but not have to worry to tell X, Y, and Z how to use this light in the corner. I just want them to do it and get on with it. And it's, if you're not allowing other assistants to get onto those sets and see that and absorb that knowledge, then the photographers aren't going to have that level of I don't know what you call it, like intuition, isn't it? Like you want to be able to work with a team. Layla my partner, always tells me off that I don't actually tell her anything or words. I just point or go, what, because I'm used to being on a set where it might be working where no one actually says anything for an hour, but everything gets done. And I'll be trying to make a salad, and I'll be like, "Where's the pepper?" And well, you didn't ask for one. Do you know that's the problem? Well, pepper goes in the salad or some shit like that. It's quite sad actually. Really rubbish example, but yeah, I just loved being busy, making other people busy, and just really grafting. I think that's the bottom line.
I was going to say, like, with the things that you kind of your 8 years spent doing that, what would be your kind of do's and don'ts that you saw on set that you would give to other people potentially looking to assist? Do you have anything that you kind of were like, that's a massive no-no, or situations where you thought, I'm going to take something away from this and I'm going to make sure that I never do that, or that never happens, or just
yeah, I get you. Yeah, I'd say never.
This could be quite a long list. The never.
Yeah, never did I ever. You never get naked. Never pole dance on a C stand. I think never. Always. It's how to phrase it, because you can disagree with your employer, but in a professional way. So I'd say like never lose your cool, even if someone. I think there's a certain breed of people in any profession who will be personally dismissive or aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
There'll always be a breed of people who do not act professionally, who you may be working for, whether it is in the production side, the photographer side, the director side, another assistant side. I always thought just never take it personally. And if you disagree with something, you have absolutely every right to flag it, as long as you have the knowledge to back up what you're flagging.
Sure.
So if you think a situation isn't right, where a way a cable has been run, or pushing ISO up instead of a light, you've got every reason to flag it, but always in a, do you mind if I ask, as a professional, should we be doing this? Not, you're doing it wrong. Because you've been hired for a role and you want to work within your role. You don't want to step on toes or tell someone who's employing you that you're more knowledgeable than them, because everyone's got more knowledge in different departments. Secondly, don't be an arsehole. Just don't do it. Don't ever have an ego. If you've, as an assistant, accepted a job at a rate, and then you get on the job and you think this rate isn't worth this, then you're setting your rates wrong, and it's not your gripe to bring to them. Like you're charging that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been loads of times where I went away on really big jobs, on massive campaigns, and I'd set my rate at what I thought was good, and then you think, oh, actually, this is a really big campaign. But you learn from that, and you go, okay, so for this I should be charging this much, because that is the workload and the time. And then so never, I'd say never work for the money. You need to do the job to learn what it's worth for your time. Never think you're too pricey for a job, and never be money centric, because that's when you don't learn, and that's when you're actually quiet. Well, I would think so. Maybe some people would disagree with me, but I think in any walk of life, people who go for the money will never get all of the jobs, because they're not considering the reliability aspect. Someone will give you your worth if you're apt. And then I think, that probably encompasses it. I've never really. I've been on some sets where there have been prickly situations, and whatever. But that's when I would take the moment to go eat a banana in the canteen, or maybe
good to get the potassium levels up.
Yeah, have a tactical urination outside. I guess there's always that classic, like, an assistant stolen a client off a photographer and stuff. But when I was assisting, I was always, even when I started shooting jobs, I was super transparent about what I did and who I was. So maybe that's the last one. Never be opaque. Always
or
be
obtuse.
or obtuse. Yeah, always be honest about who you are and what you're doing on a job and why you're there. that's it. It does. That's it. Like if I hired an assistant who said, I want to shoot exactly what you shoot, freaking A, just do it. Ask me any questions, do that. But if I hired someone who 2 weeks later was like, I don't know, I don't think, no, stop that. I think that's ego coming through. I wouldn't even care if someone was poaching me because competition is healthy. It's a hard way to describe it. I think there was a bit I made in my notes before this thing, which was the reason I stopped assisting was because I didn't want to become jaded. I think there's a line you cross where you want to create and you're on set with a certain type of whatever, and you become sort of a bit sick of it. You've been in that role too long because you should be going out and making your own content. But if you don't pull your finger out, you'll be making that content for other people, but having some kind of ego complex where you think, I should be taking this. And that's what you should never become. You should never be that dude who, when crew is out of the room, you're complaining about a job because, again, you're putting yourself there.
It is very easy, though. I can see how a lot of people do go into assisting with the kind of the overall aim of ending up shooting. But it's when you get down to it and you're busy and you're just getting the money, then you struggle to find time to shoot stuff for yourself. So you struggle to find time to end up doing the portfolio and then doing the meetings and stuff like that. All the stuff that we obviously love doing. But I hear it time and time again of assistants who just almost do get to that jaded point and they're like, do you know what? I'm not gonna shoot really because I'm doing fine as I am. And you kind of go, well, I don't necessarily want to hire you as an assistant then because I do want enthusiasm.
Yes, yeah, because there's a difference, isn't there? There's a difference between that type of assistant and the assistant who's gone, do you know what? I love doing this. I'm going to stay like it. And when you ring them, they're all up for it. You don't want me to turn up on set and to stay in the back of the splitter checking, I don't know, Deliveroo for who's around or whatever, or texting my mum saying, I hate my life, because the only person who has the choice to make their life good is yourself, So in that respect, we're getting really deep here with Daniel Ross on life choices, photography. But it's going back to that divide of the self and the business, because you invest so much of yourself, and we're all working as ourselves, as opposed to as rabbits. I don't know. You have to really make sure that you don't have too much emotion in your decisions as an assistant. I think I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me, but that's why the world is great, because it's made up of loads of different people. But I was always adamant, whatever choices I was making, whether it was taking options, confirmations, rates, it was because the knowledge and the experience I got out with it was relevant to the financial income and personal growth. Oh, that sounded good, didn't it?
It did. I did almost feel like we were kind of sliding into a seminar.
Yeah, man.
Become a millionaire next.
Yeah, just buy. If you buy all of these books off me for $299.99, I promise you, in 4 years you will be shooting a global campaign for everybody at the same time. That was I guess I sounded really, because I don't really talk. It's weird for me to do this podcast because I don't really talk about that much. It was weird because saying, I wanted to be busy and crack on. I was remember being in the pub or something, and another assistant would come up and be like, I hear you're really busy. And I'd be like, no, I'm not really, just a few things here, there, But then I was always very active on social and Twitter and whatever, running from job to job. And there was probably about a year where I was doing like double job days, 3 days in a row, going home, sleeping 3 hours. I had like 3 different assisting kits, like, daylight, natural, grippy, studio, whatever, and all these satchels. And my knee is actually screwed from lugging this bloody low pro satchel around, because I was too cool to have a backpack, because backpacks are for noobs, And then what an idiot! What are you thinking? Guys, don't worry, I'm here with my low pro satchel. It's got a load of K clamps. Whatever. Yes, but on the one hand, I was doing that, but then on the other hand, I was actually quite meek, and it's probably a self-esteem personal thing, and maybe that loops into the assistant thing to do your job, but not necessarily being seen. Like the photographer turns around and they know, you've used your intuition to put a bit of quarter diff on a window because it's a bit peachy, and the photographer goes, "Oh, that's good, isn't it?" And you're not around. You're actually having a cup of tea, and you don't have to tell them you've done it. It's just done. And that's what I really loved about being an assistant, especially on bigger sets as well, where you can have someone, and because you're not too up yourself, they go, "Look, say it's a first or whatever." Because sometimes it might be like that, or say an American photographer has his like lighting technician, but they'll be like, "Look, you need to do this, 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 and this," and you do it all. But while doing that, you make sure like this cable run is as good as can be, or there's some fresh, cold, fizzy water there, or there's whatever. And it's not about brown nosing. It's about if you're walking past a food table and it's 11:30 and everyone's been on set since 7, just pick up some protein bars and just go ask the digi or the photographer if they want it, or if they want a cup of tea or something. It's not hard to be human, as well. And that's what I think helps you, because they go, "Oh, that was nice." And that's it.
Would you say that's got to be one of your kind of like takeaway lessons from this, is just be nice?
Yeah, man. Yeah. But also don't be too nice.
Sure. Don't be an arsehole.
Yeah, don't be nice. Don't be an asshole. Don't be confident, but don't hate yourself.
It sounds like it's going to go into that speech from Team America, and I desperately want to make sure it doesn't go there.
Yeah. Do you want to be a man? Yeah, man. Assisting is a very simple but extremely complex life to have, and I think you mentioned it, Tom. It's very easy, actually, if you're at a good level, to earn very good money very consistently. And that's where you've got to, as I said, separate yourself from the business, because you don't want to be that ego arsehole who's like, "You can't afford me, you can't do it," because you'll never know everything. I've taken some like small jobs to fill a calendar or whatever, where it's just holding, like a 3-in-1 master light. But actually on that day, there's like a certain surface. This is so sad. There might be like a certain surface on the wall where actually the gold side, which you weren't using, was bouncing off this surface, but the color temperature is really nice and the dapple looked amazing on the skin. And you go, "Oh, yeah, cool. So how can you make that work in a studio?" And then you start playing, and I wouldn't have learned that if I was going to sit at home in my pants and be like, "I'm so glad I didn't take that job in Kent because my time is too valuable," But I guess you always have to work that out for yourself.
You've got to have a growth mindset, I think, to be able to appreciate that, because you're basically always looking to learn, a lifelong learner kind of mentality. And I mean, the same is true for photography. We've all taken jobs where you think, "Oh God, what? This is not what I want to be doing." But
I've never done a job like that. Never, not in my entire career.
I remember having to photograph some insurance magazine, and it was every week it would be the same kind of guy.
I've heard 50s. Those shoots come with a premium. Huh?
Still got it. And yeah, you could potentially be looking at it going, "Oh God, this is dull, or this is dry, or whatever." But especially because I was getting the kind of same kind of gigs week after week, and they could have become very repetitive. But I just treated them as like a challenge to go in every week and be like, "Right, well, I've got, at the time, this was like 10, 15 years ago, where I had limited amount of resources in terms of my lighting. So you'd go in with 3 speed lights and some gel pack that you'd cut up, and you're like, "Well, how can I make this interesting?" And it's that thing of constantly, even the situations where you could, if you were in a negative mindset, you could really get down on them. You've got to try and find a way to turn them around and say, "Well, what actually can I take away from this? What positive can I take away from this?"
Yes, I totally agree. And I think the only that's a good one. The rules to take away as an assistant: always make sure you're fed. Actually, don't let anyone ever tell you that there's no time for food or that you're not worth food or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I remember when I started off, and you go the whole day without eating, and actually, I think as a professional, if or even not leaving set, right, or something, or maybe people will disagree with me on this, like sharing rooms on travel, right? So this is a classic, and I remember getting into a big tiff with an agent once who probably, whatever. If they're listening, I know you don't like me. But, it was going to be 7 days away, sharing a room with a bloke I didn't want, And oh, that sounds romantic. I don't want you, Gareth. It didn't work in Cape Town. It's not going to work in Port Lee. Your taste in t-shirts is just not desirable. But yeah, I was going to share a room with this bloke. I didn't know who he was. Anyway, after about 6 email exchanges, because I was on set somewhere else, through my phone, they rang me, and I said to the crew, I said, "I'm sorry, do you mind if I take this? Because I just need to sort something out." All right, dude. Yeah, no stress. Anyway, they go, "Who do you think you are saying you don't want to share? This is an amazing job with a good rate." And I said, well, 1, I'm a grown man. And 2, in the mornings, I want to have a poo naked with the door open because I'm human. And that's it. That is it. Sometimes I like to just walk around naked in the room and just maybe lean on the wall for 10 minutes. I don't know, and what does this other guy like to do? I'm sure he might have some kind of, maybe he likes painting his face like a clown and hiding in the mirror and scaring himself. But the thing is, you need your own space to decompress at the end of the day. I'm sure we all know that. If you're surrounded by even a small crew, like 4 or 5 people, whatever, you're with them the whole day. The thing I love the most, and I think I've got better at this in my personal life as well, actually, is everyone will be like, "Do you want to have another drink in the bar?" And I'll be like, "No, I'm off to have a bath and sit in my room." And if you're sharing a room with someone, you can't do that, man. You can't. You go. I got one of the last gigs I did was up in Scotland. In this, it was like the client was directly producing it, and I turned up. They knew what they were doing. And because I confirmed an email, man. I was like, I was going up with a load of DigiKit, renting all this, and I was like, right. And I was going up a day late because I was on another job. But I'd worked with them a few times. They really liked where I knew the systems, and I was like, all right, cool. And I was bringing a couple of cameras up as well because the guy who was shooting was from Vienna. It's all a bit lapsed, but it just paints a picture that a lot of production had been done. And I said, look, with the room I've got a lot to charge, so I need to be in. I just want to confirm that this is all good. And they said, yeah, you'll have your own room. Because and you shouldn't have to confirm it, but you do, and this highlights why. And I turned up, and the producer stepped, and he put like his really big head in mine. I'd flown to Glasgow, and then the model had missed his flight, so we had to drive to Edinburgh and then drive to the location up on the northwest. So I've been in the car for like 7 hours after flying. I think the travel day turned out to be like 14 hours, man. And I wasn't even in like Mongolia. I was in a Skoda on a Scottish motorway, pulling up to. This is what I love about assisting. You don't get this kind of stuff. We pulled up to a petrol station by the side of like an amazing vista, and go up, and there's like an ice cream machine, and I went into this little room. I didn't know anyone was in there, and I was like, "Oh yeah, ice cream!" And this Scottish guy was like, "Where the fuck do you think you are? Fucking Brighton!" And I was like, "Brighton's such a specific thing because that's not even warm and sunny right now. This is November, bro." But it's just the aggressiveness, and I was like, But in that room was like weird Sharpie on the walls, like George is a dickhead, and it was just this little guy's office. But that actually wasn't when I looked in the ice cream thing, there was no ice cream in there, and I was like, "What is this? Do you not have anything in stock?" He goes, What are you doing in my garage? And it was a random garage adjoined to the petrol station, but it was the guy who lived in the bungalow down the road. And I was like, "Oh, this is strange." And then we got into this weird conversation. I was like, "So what?" Cause I was just tired, man, and I was a bit. So I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm just sitting."
Just sitting.
And I was like, "All right. So do you work at the petrol station?" He goes, No. I live up the road. And we got into this conversation. It turns out he just really hates his life and his wife and his family. And I was like, this is a really strange experience. So I'm going to leave this thing. That's the thing I'll come back to, actually. Strange experiences as an assistant. It's amazing. I've got one story to tell, which is great. So where was I going? Anyway, so this producer puts this big head in mine, and he goes, he's really posh. "Daniel, I went, oh, I'm in trouble. I am in trouble. He goes, I am so sorry. And I was like, all right, dude, yeah, no one's dead. And he goes, no, not yet. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? And
What?
if you manage to move it, it was like something like what we do in the shadows. It was like a big mansion house on a private estate. This guy is like, he's sorted. He can afford to put you in a hotel if there's not enough rooms.
Sure.
But somehow he got 30 crew into a 20-bed mansion thing. So, stylist assistants are sharing. The vibe in that house was just, it was like peanut brittle if you're allergic to nuts. It was hard. And we were filming as well. So I was in like the East Wing. Daniel, you're in the East Wing in Banyan Suite. I was thinking, I'm going to put my Banyan Suite up your bumhole. And I've got like 4 pellies, 2 bags, because I'm bringing all this kit up, right? And I've had to check it in myself and drag it myself. And the guy who was driving us, I'm just a driver, wouldn't let me load. And don't scratch the paint. It's an 06 plate Omega, bro. The whole paint job is a scratch. So we go up to this East Wing, and I went in, and this guy's he's fiddling with himself in his boxes because it's like really stuffy up there, like starfish on this blow up mattress. And I was like, I'm Dan, and he goes, all right, Dan, do you want a Magnum? And they had this weird little mini fridge, and I'm like, what is going on? And then someone bumps behind me, and he's like, hi guys, I've just turned up as well. Oh, cool, sleepover. And I was like, I am ready to fucking die. It wasn't because I thought I was over this situation, but I was so tired, man. And it turned out that these 2 guys, I didn't know we were filming, but one was a camera op who works on documentaries. So he was really used to sharing, and he was always pissed up and whatever.
Right.
And the guy who was really excited was some random intern from like Cardiff or something, because this producer, didn't want to pay the money or do anything. So he's getting all these random dudes from everywhere. And it was like something from Fawlty Towers. And what I noticed was there was this really plush room in the West Wing. I just nosed around each morning. I was like, I'm going to see what the score is. There's this amazing room, totally empty. And I was like, I immediately, on a professional level, like I said, never have the demeanor of someone unprofessional. So I went up to the producer and said, yeah, lovely place. Yeah, thank you very much. And I said, I just noticed in the opposite wing, there is quite a large bedroom with about 8 power sockets, which would be perfect for me and my kit. And I was just wondering if anyone's in there. And he was like, no one's in there. And I was like, oh, would you mind terribly if I was to take the place? He goes, no, that's one of the models who's coming in 4 days is going to be in there. And I was like, you bastard. You don't see you. Long story short, I lost my cool, and I actually just moved myself in. And I made up a story that the smell from the intern was too much to bear, because I didn't think he was at the level where they'd flag it with him. I just said, I think the bodily odour of this man, and I can't sleep. But it came back round to haunt me because old plumbing and Scotland and venison. And anyway, I managed to block the bathroom suite to the point of Chernobyl on the night before the model arrived to the suite, and she came down. So I pretty much ruined the first shoot day with her because she came down. She'd flown in from Sweden or something, and then got no sleep because of the smell of the drains. And her eyes looked like someone had poked chopsticks into a beach. They're just devoid of life. And I guess the life lesson of this would be never think you're too good to take a poo in a Scottish bathroom, because I had no regrets. But the regret I had was that I hadn't put my foot down before entering that East Wing room. Do you know what I mean? I should have just stayed on the bus and been like, look, dude, you have to sort me out a room. But I was weak in myself to allow them to lead me to this room and put me in there. And then all of the damage came out of me trying to fix it myself, whereas I should have just been very, very, very professional and just said, look, guys, I'm not being an arse. And there was like a Best Western thing just outside the estate for like £30 a night. I should have just said, I'll pay myself to stay there.
So at what point during you blocking the plumbing did you realise it was probably time for you to make the jump from assistant to photographer?
As I was making the jump out of the second story window into a log pile. But do you know what? It was great because I didn't tell anyone, and we were at dinner and we were having like this stew, and everyone was going, "Oh, this is very rich and sumptuous." I was going, "There's something rich and sumptuous above your head in the pipes, my man." It was all that kind of thing, and it was just an irony, to summarise, I'd say from them cutting all the corners, there was so much stress caused by aggravating crew that now, as a photographer, I always make sure everyone is sorted out and everyone has their rooms and their food and because you're your own contained people, right? Mm-hmm. So you can never sacrifice. You can't keep that extra bit of budget of the pie for yourself if it's going to sacrifice your lighting assistant's sleep. Food and sleep is the two most important things for anyone in any walk of life. And why are you going to deprive anyone of that to make an extra £80 plus VAT? Great.
Yeah. Getting hungry grumps on set, you don't want anyone with hungry grumps.
No, man.
Oh, God, no. Also, I think people just forget, like, if you look after your crew, they will look after you.
Ooh,
thank you very much. It's kind of one of my mantras. Not got many, but I've got that one. But like when, I've always looked after my crew, and whenever I have paid crew myself, they get paid on the day, or they get paid an hour after getting an invoice. Because the contract's not between them and the client. The contract's between me and them, right? So, but it also means that when I pick up the phone, they go, "Oh yeah, Tom pays real quick, great." And like when you're on set and stuff, because we know things go catastrophically wrong. If you've tried to scrimp and scrape pennies from your assistants, they're not going to bend over backwards to try and fix whatever situation it is, because they're just like, "No, man, like, why on earth?" Like a good assistant will make or break a shoot. And if you are then sticking them in a room with a man with a mini fridge full of Magnums, and who is keeping ice cream in a fridge? Not a freezer?
But they weren't even full size. They weren't even full size.
I mean, that should have been the kind of the main indication, really.
At which point did he pull his hand out of his pants to get the Magnum out of the fridge?
Do you know what? He was the only way I'm going to say it. It's seared into my brain. The way he was fondling while sucking the Magnum stick made me realise that he wasn't going to remove his hand. It was there, but that was also the same hand which was opening and closing the door to the room. So I'm just going to. But actually, he was such a dude. He was a really nice guy. On the shoot, he was like one of the best dudes there. And the more you talk to him, he was the classic like doco dude filming who just spends all of his life plane, train, bus, whatever. Will sleep in any box, whatever. But it was that kind of twist, because they put doco guys on a commercial advertising shoot, and that's where and they knew what they were doing, because they said, "Oh, these guys won't mind whatever." So then that made me look like the arse, because when I flagged it with him on set, he was like, "Well, I don't see what the problem is. I shared a mud hut in X, Y, and Z for 3 months," and I said, "Well, actually, no, I'd do that if it was part of the course." But
context.
But the fact is, we're in a mansion in Scotland on some guy's private estate, and you can't even get anyway. I'm starting to sound like an egomaniac, but I would have. It took me a day and a half to warm up to him, but if I hadn't been sharing a room, we would have got on straight away at breakfast. But all I could think of as he was passing me the muesli was his mueslis. Yes, was his red, purple, and brown striped box. What? Ew, no. So
How are you going to top that with weird things you've seen then as an assistant?
I've seen so many weird things, man. When I was in Athens once on a massive fashion campaign, we managed to take 7 stray dogs back to the hotel. We got a wolf pack while we were all pissed up. It was the best thing I've ever seen in my life, because I didn't know like the stray dog problem in Athens was so big. Massive populace, but they're all chiller. And we'd had a bit of ouzo, and we were coming back from a cafe, and I was like, "Oh, dogs!" And this producer was like, "No!" And, the local guys, and all of a sudden there were like these 16 dogs, and the photographer I was working with, he had a baby, so every time we were away, he was like cutting loose. The lighting assistant was one of our mates as well, so we were all like, "Yeah, it's a dog bag, woo!" Flash forward like 20 minutes, and you're in the reception of this Athens hotel, quite bougie, with all these dogs barking, and people are going, "You can't bring in these animals." And we go, "They are our friends. You don't know anything." I've seen the best one where I think it made me realise I wanted to go into the career was when I was working in Manchester. Worked with a really random dude, and I'm not going to mention any names just in case someone random knows him. But so I was living in Leeds at the time, and so I got the train through at like 5 a.m. to meet this guy at Piccadilly at like 5 to 6 or whatever. And he lives out in the middle of nowhere. He's quite lofty, like perfect. I'd describe the photography world as a sitcom, which has already been written 20 times. You just need to film it. So I turn up. My rate was it was for Toyota. I think my rate was £85 for the day. Yeah, it was very fresh. I was like, "This is going to be a good day. We get to drive cars and eat Waitrose sandwiches." And I was like, "I can't wait for this." And still to this day, it's one of the best experiences I've ever had, just purely for the 20 minutes of confusion. So he had like an old landy. It was like wearing a cravat, and I was thinking, this guy's like styled, because I was just I looked homeless at that time, to be fair, because I was just BMXing and living in a DOS house. "Oh, hey man, have you got a lighter?" Smoking as well. And anyway, he picked me up, and he was really nice. It was like classic FM. He was telling me about like his herd of alpacas and all this kind of stuff. And we were driving around Manchester, and so in hindsight, there was his altercation with this white BMW 5 Series, who kind of zigzagged and then cut him up at an intersection. And he was super calm. But in hindsight, his knuckles were so white on the steering wheel. And but all the time he's going, "And how are you finding Leeds, Dan?" In that like kind of psychotherapist voice. And I was going, "Yeah, it's really good. And what would you like to go into shooting? And what would you like to do?" And after about 5, 6, 7 minutes, I'd realised we've just been in the loop following this 5 Series taxi. And I was going, "Oh, and so how long do you think it will take to get to Toyota? Because they're on the outskirts." He's like, "Oh, maybe half an hour." And all of a sudden, this bimmer was going to go in the left lane, but it was kind of wedged between a moped driver and a lorry. So there was a gap like by the side of it. And all of a sudden, he puts his foot down, and I got like whiplash. I was like, "What is going on?" And he sort of screeched to a halt, boxing this bimmer in, like hands the tightest I've ever, could have snapped a child's neck. And I'm going, "Okay." And he like really calmly, like puts on the hazards. He goes, "Dan, I'm just going to pop out and have a word with this driver." And all this time, you've got to imagine it's like American Psycho. There's like Bach's Fifth Symphony playing in the background on classic FM, right? I'm in this 80s landy which smells of dog. He's wearing a cravat and corduroy. He is like on for this. And I, as you do, as soon as he got out, human impulse, I'm like just checking my phone. I'm like, and then I can hear like, and he's reaching through this window to try and kill this bloke and ripping off this windscreen wiper on this bimmer, right? He's ripping off this, and I'm going, "I today am going to die." And he's going, I will end your life. Anyway, throws this windscreen wiper at the window. This guy in his taxi is just hands up going, I didn't know I'd done anything. He's so innocent, There's a client in the back screaming. Oh, well, from the hair movement to the semi-tints, which were a little bit bubbled, I could tell she was probably panicking quite a bit. And then he kind of came back in to the car, turned off the hazards, put his belt on, and then we just started driving off. He went up like a side street and whatever. And he goes, and you were telling me about Leeds, Dan. And I was like, oh my God, this is just the best. And from that day, I was like, I have to meet more of these people. Because I think, 1 in 6 jobs, which is really random, section, you would meet these people. There was one guy I worked with who was like a paragliding. He looked like Antonio Banderas mixed with a second-hand car salesman. And on beauty shoots, when the model, Elliot, I was with him on this shoot. He's another ex-assistant he's shooting at. And he'd wear like these really low-cut V-neck t-shirts, and he would talk like this. He shoots hair campaigns. He lives in New York, but he's from, España. And he'd literally be like, and this is a video of me hang gliding topless off Cape Town Table Mountain. And all these models would be like, why are you showing me these? And he'd be like, and this is me painted as a tiger. Do you like tigers? And it'd be one of those shoots where they'd be like, can you just close set? And we'd be behind the polyboards going, this isn't real. This guy can't be real. This has to be like face jacker or whatever. This is just so strange. And he'd get really like aroused behind the camera and just start screaming, beautiful, into the camera. But he's doing a beauty macro shot of a woman. So he's only like 11 inches from this woman's face, who can't lean any further back because she's got a tennis ball at the back of her head. And she's going, I love it. This is great. And, and you just think, especially coming from a building site, you think, that reminds me of Lurza, the Lithuanian, who used to get really drunk at lunchtime and take a sledgehammer to cars. It's just the extremities. So to this day, Layla, my partner, keeps saying I have to write my sitcom and screenplay. But,
100%.
Producers and there was one time in Iceland, a producer, production assistant, she was telling me about, I probably shouldn't share this really, but it was one of those awkward things where all the rest of the crew has gone to bed, last orders, we're not paying, we got a load of cocktails in, and she started telling me about how her and her boyfriend were swingers, but they became swingers because they went home and found out her parents were swingers and ended up joining in this, and me and this creative director are there. Yeah, exactly. Me and this creative director were like, and before I could even look at him, he was gone, and then it was just me and her. And then she was so intense. She was like, when you go like, when you see like lamping, she was like 2 million watt candle torches looking at me, and she goes, and what do you like to do, Dan? And I was like, well, in life, because I'm not like the most showy offy of people. And she was this really meek, like 22-year-old, unassuming, gentle English rose, and she was looking at me like she was going to rip off my nipples and use them as like tanning bed glasses. I was so scared, man. It flipped on a second, and the next day, all I'm saying is the crew bus was so awkward because he told everyone. The CD had told everyone. He was like, "This is gold." And, you'd be going over some rocky ground and. A stylist would be going, it's swinging about a bit here, isn't it? Get some pampas grasses in this bus.
No.
You've got to laugh, man. You've got to. It's just great. It's great content. Loved it every second. So yeah, I mean that was a bit of a random trajectory, but it was good. We're gonna start wrapping it up. But at what point, quickly, obviously, it would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't obviously cover one of the main points. At what point did you decide that enough was enough with assisting, and that you were then going to make the jump to full-time shooting? Yeah, do you know what? I'd actually would have stayed assisting a lot longer, but just from picking stuff up, I started getting more and more shooting jobs alongside, and it ended up being too stressful juggling my calendar. Right. So I started setting a minimum rate, and that freed up some days for me to have meetings and have jobs. And it kind of just slowly, I had like a really slow retirement. I had like a 2.5, 3 year retirement where I was shooting. And that's what I was saying before about being transparent. And if someone, I'd be on set with a photographer and they'd be like, what are you doing next week? I'd be like, I'm shooting a thing for this. I wouldn't say, I'm just working. And through that, gradually those photographers would be like, well, yeah, I won't book him because he's starting to shoot, not in a negative sense, just they knew I was starting to shoot. And naturally I just slid out of those roles, I transparent again. Sometimes I'll still go do a very cheeky digi job for someone. I've got no qualms about it. Someone rings me and I've got a quiet day. I get to hang out with my mate and just switch off for the day and press some keys. I'm down with it, man. It's great. It's I think that's the biggest challenge I found is it like the workload, how it comes, and the extremities. It's a lot. You can sort of set the level as an assistant, and I think as a photographer, you've got to kind of ride it a bit more. I don't know if you guys agree, but I found it's a different lifestyle shooting to assisting, definitely.
I can't really compare. I've never assisted. I don't know, Greg. Did you ever assist?
The only time I ever assisted was, talk about weird experiences. I think, considering I basically only ever really had one assisting job, it was pretty weird. It involved some fire juggling and a, what's the correct term for this?
Yes, pick your words. Pick your words very carefully.
I am excited.
An amputee fetish model with a 12-inch strap on.
Great.
Righto.
Tell me more.
And which one of your high-end clients was this for?
It was actually, there was a magazine back in the day, and it's no longer around, called Bizarre Magazine.
Bizarre Magazine. Wow.
And I was assisting I wasn't really assisting the photographer. I'd been asked to come along by the mag as a kind of spare pair of hands, and it was an eye opener. I remember the photographer turning up in a massive, Humvee, ticking all the kind of boxes, stereotypical boxes I had in my head.
Yeah, man.
It was like, it was very, very odd, and I was effectively just a runner on set, and I remember being sent to this dressing room to ask about something, and stumbling on this poor woman who was kind of took it totally in her stride.
What, the strap on?
Literally sat there. No, she was Billy Bonnet naked and putting her leg on, which was quite. Wasn't what I was expecting to see.
How had you seen anything like that before? Was it a bit did it just completely kind of catch you by surprise when you come around the corner?
Yeah, I don't know the words really. I don't know the words. That should say enough.
That reminds me of a time for GQ magazine when I'd first come to London, and we were shooting. It was when the Olympics were here, and it was a pummel horse dude. They had to he was wearing a jock strap because they were going to retouch it so they looked naked, with his legs akimbo. But I had to support his buttocks from behind, but his bumhole, the way I had to do it was like my third eye. And when your parents ask, how is your life going? And you have to say, well, today I touched an Olympian's ring. And that you hope that they interpret it the other way as to the reality of the situation. It's great. Some days, I literally did nothing. And you think, life. So, it's a weird. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's a weird bag.
It's an exciting career option, basically.
It's fantastic,
if you're out
man.
there and you're considering assisting, I hope that today has been an eye opener for that.
You'll get to do some crazy things.
Yeah, the summary for me is it will take you to places you would never have gone, and you'll meet people you would never have met. And I think at the base of it, that is an amazing reason to do it.
Absolutely.
And that is it. I know I've rambled far too long, and I don't think I've probably answered anything. But
well, we've our final kind of thing that we always do with our guests is a bit of a kind of desert island. It's a total rip off.
We have completely ripped that off completely.
Yeah.
So we tend to ask what people's, if they had to go on a desert island, what would be their pick for a photo book, and what would be their pick for a desert island camera?
Yeah, okay.
It's like a little bit of light relief after Olympian sphincters.
Well, actually, my photo book would be the Olympian Sphincter Volume 12 from Nagasaki, 82. I feel like the frost ratio was great. I'm a bit ignoramus on photo books. from being work, and blinky, I'm quite similar with photography. Unless I stumble across it, I don't find it. But my favorite book is, and I will show it to you guys. I know people can't see, but you guys.
We can describe it.
Is this? So it is called Citizen, and it's by an extremely nice guy called Ingvar Kenner. He's a Swedish photographer who I assisted on a, I don't know, it's like an Australian bank commercial. He lives in Australia, and he spent about 15 years traveling around on a motorbike, and it's a little bit like Peter Hugo, maybe like deadpan portraits of people, all 6'6", sort of Mimir vibes, but there's like a distance and a connection in his photography. Which,
what was the chap's name?
Ingvar Kenner. So it's Ingvar and then Kenne. And also, his book is wrapped in Hessian, which is really nice. Nice. But it's, I don't know, there's just something about, he's shot, and he's got like Al Weiwei and people, but then they're put next to like Joe Bloggs from a motel on the side of the road. And when you meet him, you see him in his work. I don't know if that sounds arsey or not, but he's just a really nice dude. Do you know what I mean? And like, he gave me this book on the job because he brought some over for clients. He was like, "Yeah, take my book." And at the time, I was like, "Well, a bit poncy, isn't it? You're giving out your book on it, take my book." But because I said I'm ignoramus and don't really buy them, it's like I actually quite treasure it. And the more I look over it, the more I appreciate the frames in it. And I don't know, it's just the variety and there's a continuity in his style, which, the front cover is this Aboriginal woman and she's behind her washing, and I don't know, there's just something about it's disjointed and together at the same time. And, the expression she has and stuff, like she doesn't look the friendliest, but obviously he's been speaking to him, whatever. And it's that kind of, I don't know, there's like a contrast and a subtlety in his work, which I really do like. And it, in a lot of my personal work I like the mundane and normal, and these people are just wherever, he hasn't posed them. They're just stood. That's it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a bit, he's got Tracy Owen in here, whatever.
We'll link to it in the show notes.
Yes.
If it's for sale somewhere, we'll try and link to it.
I'm sure it is.
And for your Desert Island camera, what's that?
Oh, dude, this is... It's actually a Tamagotchi with a camera on it. This is really hard, actually, because
Fuji, you like shooting Fujis, from what I remember.
Yes, so I've got a 100F, which I absolutely adore.
I think as long as I've known you, you've always had an X100 of some ilk always hanging around your neck. Yeah, so I have it on me pretty much all the time. But then, is that too easy to say it's my Desert Island camera? Is it too easy? Because I love my D850s, which is what I use for commercial. But at the same time, so we just started this little dog in lockdown project, and we've made an Instagram, and everything on that I'm using the Fuji because it's very inconspicuous and nice and whatever. So off the bat, I would say that. But I mean, I guess you don't have any. I've never been one for shooting film, actually. I do like the tonalities, but I don't actually shoot it. I think it'd either be the X100F, or if I just wanted to spend all day cleaning sand out of it, like a Phase 1 XF. And because then I'd be more occupied, right? I'd just be like, "This is great. Someone get me a swap." Yeah. No, I think I'd stick with the Fuji, because it actually, I think the last few years of me shooting, I've totally changed. I used to think I wanted to do very locked off technical stuff and use phases stuff, but it's totally changed the way I shoot. And it's taken me back to how, when I first started shooting, when I went to that foundation degree, it was very photojournalistic, and it was all about finding frames and stuff and not really making them. And it's allowed me to fuse technical approach and remembering what I personally like. And it's lovely to have. And I totally get why so many people enjoy using Fuji, because they're great and they're small and they're good quality and they feel robust. And the colours are nice.
Yeah.
The colours are good. So last 10 seconds on the Fuji, luminous orange and greens come out so well, and on my Nikon they're totally washed. And I think you just get that little bit of depth. And being a crop sensor, you get the extra depth of field, but the feel of the drop off as well. I don't know, Greg. I know you use the old Fuji, and Tom, you've got a. I mean, you got a 100.
No, I'm purely Leica. I've sold.
Oh my days!
Yeah,
He's risen above.
No,
don't speak to Tom by the polyboard. This is what your assistants would do. The first would be like, do not directly address Tom. Do not touch the Leicas. He does not like warm ale. He does not do, and you know.
I mean, to be fair, I don't like warm ale. It's disgusting, man.
But you're first. You'd be like, do you think Tom would like a drink? And the first would be like, don't talk to me. Stand by that 16 amp cable and wait to be looked at. That's where you're going to be, Tom. It's going to be great.
Do you know what? In my defense, I used an X100 for years and years and years. Actually, I think on your recommendation, I bought one and really loved it. And then when I tried the Leica Q, I fell in love all over again. And then I upgraded to a Q2. And I don't know, there's something about full frame and 1.7 semi-lux. All about it.
Yeah, dude, banging.
All about it.
Tell you what, actually, on the flippity, the reason I'd be tough pressed to leave the Nikon is because this is really geeky, but at 3.2, 150 mil, the Nikon feels so creamy and cinematic. It's really, really nice. You cheat that depth, which a lot of DSLRs don't get, and that's what I shoot a lot of my work on, actually. And in on the back of film from assisting, I've ended up going in that way a lot because I've known how sets work. I'd much rather use that close in and have to battle with focus stuff because I don't know, it's just something about the textures and shooting. I used to be like nothing over 100 ISO. Now I'm like 5,000 ISO. 40th of a second. Let's do it, and it's because you get the feel and the vibe right, and that's why I do love the Nikon. But I think yeah, for usability, the Fuji does actually steal it. It's very nice because I can't take cinematic shots of my own toes on the desert island. It'd be self gratification, and also I wouldn't be able to focus that close. So on a purely technical, if I was going back to the Digiman,
I don't think your legs are that short.
I think you're fine.
And also at 3.2, even at 100 ISO on a very sunny day, you're going to have to put a one-stop ND in that. And you'll probably be better taking a 4x4 matte box system. But I think with the sand, you're in a lot of trouble if you scratch those rings. Are you on about the Olympians? No, just the cameras. It's just the cameras I'm on about. I'm not on about the Olympians.
I love the fact you brought it back to the rings. I think that's probably a good point to end on, to be honest.
I think that's a perfect quote to live it by, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Dan. I think that there was some absolute nuggets in there.
No, they weren't.
Not the ring. Stop with the ring, bro.
Mainly in that guy's pants.
I knew it was coming.
This ex-assistant just has a fetish. I can't listen to anything he said. I don't know what these voices are I'm putting on either. Lockdown has destroyed my communication skills. It's really weird.
I don't know. Weird. I think they add to it.
I'm manic, absolutely.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me. It's feel one, just to talk to you guys, and two, it's quite humbling to even be considered for. I guess I just don't talk at length much about myself, so it's quite weirdly interesting to do.
That's not true.
I mean, I found it very interesting. I found it very amusing as well.
We had a call a couple of weeks ago, and you didn't let me get a word in edgeways.
That was just before my breakdown, Tom. So if you'd have actually been listening subtly, I was crying out for help, and you didn't help.
Well, are you saying it's my fault?
No, I would never direct blame. I said professionally on set, I would just address the issue with you and work with you. Exactly.
Well, we'll sort that off air.
Yes, we will. You just watch this space. Absolutely great.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. We hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you would like to follow us along on Instagram, we are at xnegative. That's EX-negative. And you can follow us personally. Mine is at tombarnes.com. That's DOTCOM at the end. And Greg's is at Greg Fennell. And that is with 2 N's and 2 L's. We hope to catch you on the next one. And thank you very much for listening.